Do libs want to cancel Christmas too? Antifa attacks a MAGA rally in D.C., more good vaccine news, Washington and Michigan impose lockdowns, and exodus from NYC is real. Welcome, everybody. We are in the middle of November. We're getting close to Thanksgiving. And then after that, it's going to be on a rapid schedule for the holiday period, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's. Fantastic stuff on the horizon, except we all know that there is this growing movement in the country from people who are lockdowners, leftists, statists, people that are obsessed with controlling others or who have been overcome with their own anxieties and fears. They want to tell you that you're not really allowed to have a holiday. Or if you have a holiday, it needs to be outside. You can only have certain family members. You can't go above 10 people. And this is all because if you don't, you're being reckless and people will literally die because of that recklessness. We need to reject this. Enough is enough. It's time for us to say back off or blank off, if you will. It's time for us to tell people that we're not going to sit around anymore and allow government authorities to make these on-the-fly, seat-of-the-pants decisions that don't ever have the intended outcome. Or whatever it is, if it's a lockdown now or if it's a lockdown in a month, it'll be temporary and it will eventually recede. It will happen and then it will stop happening and then there'll be more virus and we'll keep going. Wash, rinse, repeat. That's what we're going through right now as a country and have been for many months. But they don't want you to start thinking just because of the promising news about a vaccine. Now, another vaccine, this one a Moderna, with 94+% effectiveness in giving someone protection against this virus. Let's all understand there's already some portion of the population that has either just good enough immunity that they won't even show symptoms from this, or they have antibodies and T-cell immunity from either cross exposure to similar enough viruses or from this virus in the past. When you start adding a 94 to almost 95% effective vaccine into the mix, which is far higher than what was anticipated, we're getting much closer to this being a situation where it's absurd. It's frankly absurd. It's wrong to continue to insist that people not live their lives because of the risk here. Nobody thinks that we should build public policy off of a zero risk tolerance posture. And if anyone's going to question that, we would just say, it is true, and I know that there's been all this anti-flu bro stuff over this year because this is not the flu, it's different, it's worse for older people. But every year, tens of thousands of people die from the flu, and we don't shut down society over it. And you could certainly make an argument if we entirely shut down society, it would lessen flu cases, but there would be catastrophic costs that would come with that, especially if it were a yearly occasion. So what do? We tell people to try to be sensible, take personal precautions, get the vaccine if you are an older person, although flu vaccines are really 30 to 50% effective in most years. And then we all live our lives because we do not exist in a society where the state promises you perfect health. You know, I understand that we have an average life expectancy now deep into the 70s, but that doesn't mean the government guarantees anyone that they'll make it deep into their 70s or even their 80s or perhaps even their 90s, right? Which would be fantastic, and a lot of us hopefully will make it there, but there are no guarantees in life, friends. And to build a government policy around that is destructive. It's also unconstitutional. It's eroding the relationship between free people and a government that is supposed to be representative but limited as well, right? Representative of our interests and supporting them, but also knows that there are some areas that it cannot transgress. It just can't go. It's not the government's mandate. It's not its job. It should be troubling then when you have little Fauci over the weekend. This guy has still to this day not said anything that I could point to and say, you know what, this was really helpful. This was a game changer for us. This must have saved a lot of lives. No, in fact, at critical junctures, his advice has been wrong. And it really just comes down to be afraid, panic, avoid each other, and give up as much as you possibly can of your life while we try to figure out what the heck we're doing. That's really the sum total of what his strategy has been. And that's why when he says something like this, now I understand that it was fake Tapper who even goes to the so no Christmas point in this conversation. But over the weekend, this is the top infectious disease expert of the United States government. And here he is telling everybody, no, not only are we going to have to more or less cancel Thanksgiving, we've also got to be prepared for the opposite of a jolly Christmas. You can sit alone hoping you don't get some virus in your house, in your apartment, and Zoom family members from far away because everyone now is just a vector for disease, and you can't take any risks for anyone. Here's how some of that exchange went. Play the clip.
The vaccine has got to be deployed, and we can't abandon fundamental public health measures. You can approach a degree of normality while still doing some fundamental public health things that synergize with the vaccine to get us back to normal.
So not until the second or third quarter of 2021, though. Christmas is probably not going to be possible.
Yeah, I think that if we get most of the country vaccinated and
So we're not going to have vaccines by the end of the year. We've known that, but they will start in the new year. But in the meantime, what do we do? This is where the debate now lies. What should we think is acceptable between now and when vaccine distribution actually happens? And they're going back to lockdowns, even though the evidence that lockdowns work and save lives is questionable at best. And we have a government that's basing major policy decisions now, a bureaucracy. And yes, the Trump administration hasn't pushed back on this as forcefully as I think it should have. The Democrats, of course, are extreme lockdowners. They love this power, and we'll get into their hopes they can use this far beyond just the pandemic, which I've been telling you all along would be their reality. But we have to actually fight back against this. I mean, Michigan and Washington State have both gone into 3-week stay-at-home order lockdowns. So those are now states where they're pushing even the more extreme from what we saw the early stage of the pandemic restrictions. And that was why Dr. Scott Atlas, who was one of the president's advisors on coronavirus over the weekend, tweeted out that it's time to rise up against this stuff. Now, he didn't mean violence. I know the libs always jump to that. He just means you got to tell people no. You got to tell people, I'm sorry, we're not just going to keep obeying these rules because there's some people out there who are terrified. I mean, if you're 30 years old and you're terrified of COVID, chances are you're just not very well informed. Unless you happen to be a very, very small percentage of people out there who have a kind of immunocompromised state that would make them very susceptible to this. But we're talking about the exception, not the rule here. For most people in their 30s and their 40s, this is not a big deal. In fact, I just spoke to someone over the weekend. Her whole family's got COVID. They feel like they've got some cold symptoms. They're basically fine. And they're all in their 30s, and they've got young children. But this is the standard that ends up happening across the country for so many people. If you're 85, you're at tremendous risk from the normal flu in any given year, as well as the possibility of just getting pneumonia from a variety of other infections. People who are at that age range are at risk from a lot of diseases. And yes, COVID has been a particularly serious risk in this year, but we're treating all of society. I mean, the government's policies effectively act like everyone is in their 80s. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't take those steps for people in their 80s, but that's the focused protection that we talked about in the Great Barrington Declaration. That would be far more sensible. I am not afraid of getting COVID. I don't want to give COVID to anyone who's in their 70s or their 80s, and so I would limit my exposure to those people, and I would make sure that there would be any, that I would have precautions taken. But I'm not worried about getting COVID, and quite honestly, I'm not worried about giving COVID accidentally to somebody else who's in their 30s or 40s if I'm asymptomatic, because the chances of them being particularly sick with it are also very, very low. These are the things that we've actually learned about this virus, about this disease. But they're not letting go of the iron grip of control here. They're acting like they've figured this stuff out, like they know what needs to be done. Here is Dr. Fauci telling people that even after you are vaccinated, you are to continue with these public health measures. Play 9.
Once the process is complete, does that mean they can take off their mask? They don't have to social distance? They can just go about their lives as before?
You know, I would recommend that that's not the case. I would recommend you have an added area of protection. Obviously, with a 90+% effective vaccine, you could feel much more confident. But I would recommend to people to not abandon all public health measures just because you've been vaccinated. Because even though for the general population, it might be 90 to 95% effective, you don't necessarily know for you how effective it is. So when I get vaccinated, which I hope to, when it becomes my turn to get vaccinated, I'm not going to abandon completely public health measures. I could feel more relaxed and essentially not having the stringency of it that we have right now. But I think abandoning it completely would not be a good idea.
Because 5 to 10% of the people that get immunized, it will not be effective for. So they might actually get the virus if they just completely let down their guard. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think even fake Tapper there is realizing. So now we have a no risk policy. You have you get a vaccine that's 95%. Remember, it's not 100% you're even going to get infected. And it's not 100% if you get infected, you're even going to end up in the hospital or dying from it. It's not even close. It's less than 1%. Think about the percentages we're talking about here. And this is Fauci. People listen to this guy. He's just not very bright, folks. I don't know what to tell you. He doesn't see all the other things that are going on in society right now. You know, we're abandon public health measures. What does that mean? Here's the question, Fauci. Can we start going to restaurants, stop wearing masks in the gym, stop mask shaming strangers for being outside in fresh air without a covering over their mouth and their nose all the time once a person has the vaccine? The answer is yes. This is a policy question. You know, there's a reason why we don't have doctors running everything. I'm just going to say it. He's only focused in on this one thing, this one point. He has no ability whatsoever to balance out the rest of what's happening in society. And he's been wrong countless times already about the things that he's told us. If I get this vaccine, should I wear a mask? Is that reasonable? The answer is no, it's not reasonable. Stop wearing a mask once you're vaccinated. Anybody who won't say that is a lunatic, okay? They're in love with their own control, or they're so brainwashed with fear that they can't be trusted to make any decisions. A 95% effective vaccine? Did you realize what that's... The whole point here is that if 9 out of 10 people in a room can't get the virus, then the one person that can get it, the chance of them getting it is so much lower because that is herd immunity. That's how we get there. So the chance of the velocity of spread is going to collapse as you get more and more people vaccinated. Plus, you got people with the antibodies and the T cell response out there who have already been infected. So the pandemic's going to fall off a cliff. We're still going to wear masks? This lunatic really thinks that I want to be walking into my building where I live in New York City next summer in the stifling heat with a mask on because there's a 1 in a million chance that I'm going to get COVID? What is it going to take for people to realize this is now a scam? This is outrageous. They've moved the goalpost so many times, and now you've got this moron Fauci acting like we're trying to gauge for perfection. No chance of you getting COVID. Then COVID has to be eradicated in its entirety. We don't do this with other diseases. We don't do this with the flu. You know, we don't do this with name anything that kills people that's out there right now. It still exists. It's still out there. Oh, you can't leave your house. Can't be around strangers because, they might catch it from you. But this is what happens because the media is complicit in all this because they knew that the only way that Biden was going to win was putting the country in this desperate state of COVID panic and using it as just a cudgel to bludgeon Trump with all the time, which is what they've done. So they created this panic, and now they don't want to unwind it. Now they want to keep everybody nice and complacent. bend that knee, peasant, do what they tell you, even after a vaccine? Absolutely not. And we're going to have to establish something, and people are going to have to just come up with, if you're vaccinated, you wear some kind of a yellow wristband or something so that you can walk around not wearing a mask anymore. And I don't want to, where's your mask? Yeah. Didn't even do anything, folks. We're getting more cases than ever before. Mask compliance is higher than it has ever been in this country. More cases than ever before, but they never try to even explain that, do they? Oh, listen to the science. Yeah, the science, the real scientists, the ones that have to actually live with results from Big Pharma, they've created vaccines that once distributed means we get to go back to normal life, full stop. Coughing on each other on the subway and not worrying about it. That's where we are heading with this vaccine. I don't care what Fauci says. I recently got a crash course in home title theft, and you better pray this crime never happens to you because it can ruin you financially. Here's how it works. The bad guys, cyber thieves, they find your home's title online, then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off, put themselves on, and they take out loans against the equity in your home. You often won't find out about this until you receive payment demands in the mail, perhaps even a foreclosure notice. The usual identity theft services do not protect you. You have to go with the folks that I trust to create a virtual barrier around your home's title at Home Title Lock. All you have to do is go to HomeTitleLock.com, use the promo code RADIO. That will get you 30 free days of protection. You can also check online to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. That will let you see if you're a victim of this crime, don't even know it yet, and you'll get 30 free days of protection.
The vaccine will be distributed to frontline workers, the elderly, and high-risk Americans. The average development timeline for the vaccine, including clinical tests and manufacturing, can take 8 to 12 years. Through Operation Warp Speed, we're doing it in less than 1 year. If you had a different administration with different people, what we've done would have taken, in my opinion, 3, 4, 5 years, and it would have been in the FDA forever. This is 5 times faster than the fastest prior vaccine development in history. 5 times faster. Say it again, 5 times faster. Nobody can believe it, actually.
It's a record, and it's happening. And it happened under Trump, because of a government plan. And yet again, the timing here, it almost just feels like there's been history conspiring against the reelection of this administration, because I really believe if you had this vaccine information out there, if people knew where we were with this before they were voting, it would have changed their minds. Because this is a Trump administration directive. I mean, this comes from Trump's action, what we're seeing here. This is not just something that happened to occur while he was in the Oval Office. Operation Warp Speed, he's been talking about it for months. And what could be a better outcome here? 90%, 95%, multiple vaccines hitting the market. We're going to get mass distribution of it the next couple of months, next couple of quarters. And yet we're going to have a Biden administration that comes into power, and they're going to do everything they can to try to act like, oh, it's their distribution of this. It's like Trump did all the homework, and Biden's going to get to hand it in and act like he's the genius. You know, he's the one that really pulled this whole thing together. You can already tell the politics around this are going to be completely insane, because when it really came down to it, this was the biggest challenge of the Trump administration. And on the single most important issue where he really could have done something, a huge victory with these vaccines. They'll never give him credit for it, though.
This process has been driven solely by science and data. So it's a shame that some, one example being the governor of New York, have actually injected politics into the process and suggested the possibility of intentionally delaying access to an FDA-authorized vaccine, which is simply unconscionable.
Yeah, it's truly sociopathic, and I'm not trying to be funny. I mean that. That Governor Cuomo would even consider a one-day delay of this just to spite Trump shows you this guy's a psycho. I mean, he's got problems, folks. He's dangerous. Doesn't care. He goes out there writing leadership books while he's shoveling old people with COVID into nursing homes, and they're dying by the thousands because he's too stupid to figure out what a catastrophe that is. Then he writes a leadership book on what to do during COVID. A person who's capable of that is pretty frightening. And that's the situation we find ourselves in with Governor Cuomo of New York. He has already said that he's going to have his state health experts look at the vaccine and the data before it's approved for people. I live in New York, so this is personal to me. You know, I have parents here who are in their 60s and 70s, and I want them to be able to get this vaccine as soon as it comes out. And there may be a delay because Cuomo wants to play games. I thought that he was the guy that was Mr. Take the Virus seriously. He wants to wait to get a life-saving vaccine into the hands of people who are at high risk in this state. What? Because his board of hand-picked bureaucrats for whatever the New York State, I mean, I don't even know what he would call the health authority that would look over this. His New York State bureaucrats are going to do a better job than the scientists at the FDA and also at Pfizer and Moderna and these other places. These multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies, this is all they do. By the way, Big Pharma demonized a lot. And let's all take a moment here to recognize that Big Pharma may be giving us, not only saving a lot of lives, giving the world our lives back. So, you know, a little golf clap for Pfizer and Moderna and these other companies that, yes, with the profit motive in mind as well, put real world-class scientists, not world-class bureaucrats who've been sitting around for decades doing nothing with no results to show for anything. Real scientists on this one, and now we're in a place where we got a 95% effective vaccine. And there are other vaccines. I mean, I don't know how much more effective. I mean, theoretically, I guess you get to 99% maybe. I don't think anything will be 100%. But there's more that are coming online. And yet there's still politics around this. There's still the desire to make it seem like you can't trust this because Trump. And that is just disgusting. It's reckless. And Kamala and Joe Biden played this game too. Remember during the campaign, I don't know if the scientists say, but not if Trump says. Well, there was no future in which Trump was going to say, take this vaccine when it hadn't been approved by all the scientists in the chain of command before. And that was a complete myth. That was preposterous. And everybody should have recognized it as such. But when there was an opportunity for demagoguery and to frighten people, what did Kamala and Joe do? Took the completely dishonorable approach here by saying, "Oh, you can't trust this. You can't trust this vaccine." Here's what Governor Cuomo is the worst governor in America. We have the worst mayor in New York City, and I think the worst governor. Well, some of you are probably going to say, "No, I think he's the worst governor in America." I don't really think you could do worse than him. Really, where would you have to go for that one? California, Gavin Newsom, he's smarter than Cuomo. You can at least say that for him. But Cuomo's threatening to actually sue the Trump administration over this vaccine. Play 19.
I tell you today, if the Trump administration does not change this plan and does not provide an equitable vaccine process, we will enforce our legal rights. We will bring legal action to protect New Yorkers.
I mean, this guy is a lunatic. The administration has overseen the program that fast-tracked this vaccine to world record status. But now his claim is that they don't know how to distribute the vaccine. They've been working with the pharma companies on this for months and months and months. What evidence is there that Governor Cuomo knows something about vaccine distribution that Trump doesn't? What you're hearing, though, you'll notice, and this becomes the talking point, is that as Cuomo is suggesting that there's some kind of social justice element to this, that there's a lack of access. Really, are there neighborhoods where they have no health clinics, no Walmarts, no Duane Reads, no drugstores, and I mean, really? That's a thing that we're going to say is now the problem with the vaccine? Plus, there are going to be all kinds of government programs to get it directly into nursing homes. Plus, there's going to be, I mean, they're coming at this from so many different angles. And Cuomo's threatening to sue them because he doesn't think it's a good enough plan. This guy's a maniac. It's really frightening. You know, it's really frightening that these are the people who are in charge, and that there are people dumb enough to think that they're doing a good job. That's even more terrifying. Remember the whole Cuomo Brothers variety show on CNN? Ha ha. You know, got like a big Q-tip, and they did all this stuff. Ha ha. It was all so funny. Where people are dying in unprecedented numbers of COVID. I mean, the highest death rate we've ever seen. But they were doing a big ha ha thing late night on TV. That was really, really worthwhile for everybody to watch. So he's threatening to sue, and then he's trying to explain why this is a problem, and it's all bullcrap. Doesn't make any sense. Play 20.
The whole 4 years has been malpractice. This is a person who never said he understood government or wanted to govern. There is no governance. It was all public relations. My fear is he's making every mistake he made when COVID first started. This is just a redux. We're going to do vaccines, and because Pfizer and Moderna have a vaccine. Yeah, that's like COVID testing, if you remember back then. We're going to do COVID testing. I direct the states to do COVID testing. And then how are the states supposed to do testing? On vaccine, Mika, they have no idea what they're talking about with vaccinations. We have to do 330 million. This nation, with doing everything we did over the past 8 months, only did 120 million COVID tests.
This guy's a moron. He really is. We absolutely do not need to do 330 million vaccinations. He doesn't understand basic epidemiology. If you get this vaccine out to, let's say, 20 to 30 million seniors, 65 and over, the death rate from this is going to go to almost zero. I mean, you will be losing fewer people to COVID than you're currently losing to the flu in a regular month, if you get the vaccine to all the seniors who are at risk. And I'm just telling you, if you look at the data, if you look at the numbers, who dies from COVID-19? Mostly people over 75, a good number of people over 65, and almost no people under 50. I mean, you know, a tiny fraction. It's a wholly manageable public health risk to people under the age of 50. And yet he's saying we need to get 330 million doses of this out. First of all, what's his plan? You know, notice this. He says they don't know and they're going to make mistakes, but he never, what's the better idea? He's just complaining. He's got nothing to say. This guy is a dangerous buffoon. He really is. And it's a shame that New York has him as the governor. He's an unserious person, a nepotistic thug that should never have had the job in the first place. This guy's literally the governor because his daddy was governor. It just goes to show you what the situation is with New York City Democrat machine politics. But it's also very personal for him. I mean, for him, it's really just about his ongoing feud. Forget about getting COVID to people that are scared and that are at real risk from this. What's most important to Cuomo is that his petty little schoolyard crap with Trump is addressed. Play 21.
That's just Trump talking. He's going to be gone. I think, frankly, we spent too much time trying to delve into the bizarre world of Trump. He doesn't like that I criticize him. He doesn't like that I stand up to him. He's a typical bully. And it bothers him. It's not me who doubts the FDA. It's 50% of the American people. Kaiser poll, Pew poll, ABC poll, CNN poll. They all say 50% of the American people don't trust the vaccine. They believe he politicized the process. New York and 6 other states have put together an independent review panel to build that trust. So when the FDA says, here's our process, we have an independent panel with a Nobel laureate that can say it was a fair process, because if people don't trust the vaccine, they're not going to take the vaccine. It's all for naught.
Okay. What he just did there is truly disgusting beyond words. Why do 50% of people not trust this vaccine? Because Democrats like Cuomo, and him specifically, have spent months undermining the ability of the Trump administration to help produce a vaccine and for the Trump administration's FDA to oversee the safety protocols necessary for this. That's why half the country. What do you think the correlation is between people being Democrats and not trusting the vaccine? Very high. They have brainwashed their followers. They have brainwashed Biden voters into thinking that you can't trust the Trump FDA. And now they turn around and say, because of that distrust, we have to have delays and additional layers of safety and protection for people. So people like CUOMO created that problem with their reckless demagoguery that will result in people dying who would not have died. They create that distrust, and then they turn around like they're just being above the fray. Mika, you see the distrust out there about vaccines? We have to dispel that distrust now. That's why we need to have a panel. This is grotesque. I mean, this is beyond just political stuff now. This country has been through hell over this vaccine, and they just don't want to give Trump a win. Brainless thugs like CUOMO just care about how it looks for them and their side and their team, and they hate Trump. That's what really matters to them. Everything else is just for the cameras, make-believe, secondary. Yeah, eventually we'll get the vaccine out to people. If we delay it a few months because we want to play games with, think about this. This guy's really saying his public health experts, New York state government is full of morons. And I can tell you this. I mean, I can't speak to other states as well as I can New York, but I've lived here for decades. People that work in state government in New York, a lot of state reps, big bureaucrats, functionaries within the state government system are completely incompetent fools. This is a poorly run state, which is why it's also losing hundreds of thousands of people now in this last year. But he thinks that he's going to have my experts will look at the vaccine. My experts will determine whether the vaccine is acceptable. Wow, friends. Really, I understand. I understand how the founders must have felt about the British overlords not giving a crap about them taking their stuff and just ruining their lives and not giving a care about it in any way. It's what it feels like to be an American now living in New York City and New York State under Democrat control. These people just don't care. There's nothing that I can point to and say, at least on that, they'll put the politics aside because it really matters. Nope. Not even saving lives of the vaccine. Still got to be Democrats first. Still got to be leftists, statists before all else.
As soon as April, the vaccine will be available to the entire general population, with the exception of places like New York State, where, for political reasons, the governor decided to say, and I don't think it's good politically. I think it's very bad from a health standpoint, but he wants to take his time on the vaccine. He doesn't trust where the vaccine's coming from. These are coming from the greatest companies anywhere in the world, greatest labs in the world. But he doesn't trust the fact that it's this White House, this administration. So we won't be delivering it to New York until we have authorization to do so. And that pains me to say that. This is a very successful, amazing vaccine at 90% and more. But so the Governor CUOMO, will have to let us know when he's ready for it. Otherwise, we can't be delivering it to a state that won't be giving it to its people immediately. And I know the people of New York very well. I know they want it. So the governor will let us know when he's ready. He's had some very bad editorials recently about this statement and what's happened with respect to nursing homes and his handling of nursing homes. And I hope he doesn't handle this as badly as he's handled the nursing homes.
Well, that's for sure. The president not mincing words here, not pulling back the punches that CUOMO so very much deserves to be thrown in his direction. If the governor of New York holds back, or any governor for that matter, anywhere across the country. So for some of you, it doesn't seem like there's quite this interpersonal feud that's broken out with the president, but you never know. You never know. Governor Newsom, because CUOMO was talking to other governors about how they wanted to try and stop the Trump rollout plan. They wanted to do something else. I don't think any of them are that stupid, though, for their own reasons politically, that they would go along with this. Because if CUOMO, if his nonsense results in this vaccine being delayed even one day in its distribution in New York City, he should be drummed out of office. I mean, he should be forced to resign. And I mean that. And it's incumbent upon the people of New York, and I mean Democrats too. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. He's putting friends of mine, my loved ones, my family members at risk by being such a just unbelievable pig-headed thug. I mean, this guy is the worst. The worst. And people vote for him? They think it's a good idea? It's amazing. There's no redeeming quality this guy has whatsoever. None. Not even smart. Never mind the fact that he's a jerk. But that's what we are up against now in this fight to get this vaccine distributed. It doesn't matter who's going to be put at risk by this. It doesn't matter to them. They don't care. All they really care about is who gets credit for what and how can this be used as a political tool. That's what they really care about. And it's a shame that people are going to suffer as a result of this. It's a shame. But just remember this, because they're going to try to take this away from Trump. You can be assured of that. What President Trump has accomplished here with Operation Warp Speed is truly amazing. And what his administration and the scientists at these big pharma companies and the people working on Operation Warp Speed specifically to put in place the financial incentives and the federal government's backstop of this program to create the vaccine as it's being tested and proven, this is remarkable. And this is like a Manhattan Project for curing a pandemic, and it looks like Trump has pulled this off. It's a shame that people didn't figure this out in time. Enough people didn't figure this out in time to have a different election result so far.